Yeah.
So, Paul's here today to help us debunk the myth, right? That it takes millions of dollars to buy millions of dollars to buy investment property. And you know what? I can attest that it doesn't, because when I bought my first investment property, I really didn't have much. Right? I was 22, 23 years old, and I was able to pull it off. And I leveraged one property into 3 properties, and it worked out great for me. So hopefully with Paul's help, we could do the same for you.
Yeah, so thank you for being here, Paul.
Oh, you're welcome. And along those lines, if anyone's ever bought a house, you've already learned pretty much the major part of investing.
Yeah, that is investing. They don't think so, but
it is.
I mean, what's cool, Paul, is you have so many. Why don't we bring them in a little bit, because people just think, oh, it's a lot of work, it's a lot of hassles, but you have here a good list of some of the benefits of real estate investing.
Yeah, some of the benefits is you're going to have cash flow with investments.
Wait, that's new. We didn't have that for a long time in California. Cash flow.
Imagine that.
It actually in California was very difficult for over a decade.
And I think it's going to be one of the last times we're going to see it, and another, it could be for life.
Yeah.
Especially if
without a large down
especially
payment.
with rentals. Most rentals, you're going to have positive cash flow. You're also going to have appreciation, I think.
What's that?
That's a new word.
Another one we haven't seen in a while.
This is fun. We didn't have cash flow. We didn't have appreciation to talk about. We have new stuff to talk about on our radio show.
Take the dust off of these words that haven't been used for a long time.
I had to look it up in the dictionary. It says hasn't been used since 2007.
And with investments, you're going to be able to leverage, because you can always finance investments.
Okay.
Even at auctions, where everybody thinks it's cash only. There's companies out there that will loan money at auctions.
Now, let's talk about that, because this is one of your pearls of wisdom, because everybody thinks you have to have a huge down payment, but there is ways to work with other means.
I work with a company that will loan 65 to 75% LTV on auction properties.
Okay, so
you don't have to have all cash.
You don't have to have all cash.
Okay,
and you're
so
working with them.
debunking the myth, right? Because that's one of the myths. The myth is I need to buy the house cash at auction.
Right.
Wow, that's actually a great piece of advice, Paul. And so working with you, you can help them acquire this property?
Absolutely.
Okay, great.
The other thing with this particular company, there's no prepayment. It's 9-month loan, short-term loan. It's really competitive interest rates, 1% origination, and it's an attractive program.
I bet you Cherry Creek Mortgage and the Don Gino team can help them out down the road with the appreciation they're going to potentially get.
Absolutely.
Well, in fact, it's funny you say that, Don, because I have one of my buddies that purchased a property below market value, had to use a particular tool to acquire that property, such as the one that this lender that you're talking about helps them to acquire the property. We're waiting for his 6-month anniversary because he didn't buy it cash. He's going to have so much appreciation. He only put 3.5% down, and he's now going to be able to do an 80% CLTV mortgage and have no mortgage insurance and wipe out the mortgage insurance in 6 months.
Wow.
So he's going to save hundreds of dollars a month.
So obviously there's some strategies out there that weren't available before. So please listen up, because things have changed. These are conversations, these are words we hadn't been able to use before, such as cash flow and appreciation, but now it adds a lot more opportunities for investors, and that's what Paul is bringing to light. That's why he's focusing on helping an investor take advantage of this market. And there's a big difference. There's a difference between working with a real estate professional that does not work with investors, because there's a lot of pitfalls you got to be careful of, and Paul knows the pitfalls, but he also knows some advantages to help you get these properties, because the other myth is you can't get them unless you have, again, millions of dollars, pooled money, or whatever. Paul, you know how to get some of these great investment opportunities.
Oh, there's a lot of different ways to get them. There's a lot of sources for investment properties. The source that most agents will use is the MLS, but that's a tough source right now, because there's low inventory, and when one of these properties comes on the market, there's just multiple offers. They're going over list price. So that's not a good source right now for finding properties, unless you're going to be a buy and hold. If you buy and hold, you can afford to pay market price or over, because you're not looking to resell it immediately.
But why would you? You know, that's the other thing. Yes, I understand you could buy it from the MLS and you could pay full market price and still make money. But if you've got a way to help them acquire these properties at a 10 or 15% discount, by the way, folks, those 40% off days are gone, right? There's no more day after Christmas sale. Now it's just that little tiny discount on the clearance rack or something. So
well, the discount with this, I have a company that has a system to where there's actually 73 trustees in the state of California, and these trustees will update their information on a regular basis. Most of the companies that track foreclosures, like Foreclosure Radar, Really Track, some of those, they only get their data updated every couple of days, maybe once a week. So what happens?
So that's old news.
That's old news.
I mean, it could be gone by then.
And what happens? There's on average about 2,200 properties a day that are scheduled to go to auction in the state of California, but only 96% of them are canceled or postponed.
All right, let's make sure you heard that, because I know you're thinking that all these auction houses, they're selling like candy bars. But what Paul said is that only 4% of the 2,200 homes that go on the market each day, foreclosures, only 4% of them actually sell.
And what happens, you go to the auction, you take up your whole day to go to the auction. In the very beginning, they'll read off all the cancellations and postponements, and 9 out of 10 times you're going to be going home with never having a chance to bid on anything because they all canceled or postponed.
And you paid $5 a gallon for gas to get there.
Well, yeah. And wouldn't you much rather go to where you have about a 90% success rate on the properties that we say are going to sell actually do sell?
Yeah, absolutely. That makes a lot of sense. In fact, as a former Realty Track client, I will back you up on that, because I can't tell you how many phone calls I received that said, I saw this house for, here's the other thing, inaccurate information. I saw this house for $100,000, and I'm like, guys, it's a 6,000 square foot house south of the boulevard in Encino. Guess what? It's not $100,000. Okay, that was just a second or a third that they had on there, and I know that's one of the major common pitfalls that investors have when they purchase at auction. That's why it's important to work with a professional that understands the auctions, is they could purchase the wrong deed. Isn't that right?
Absolutely. You want to make sure you're buying the first trust deed. You don't want to be buying a second and then assume the liability of a first. You could lose your bacon doing that. The other thing you want to make sure is that there's not any, if there's any IRS tax liens on the property. Normally, there could be a redemption period where in 120 days the IRS could buy it back. They'd buy it back at what you paid for it. But if you went in and did repairs and invested money, you'd lose your pants on that. So you have to make sure there's no IRS redemption. Most of the liens get wiped out as long as you're buying a first trust deed, but you just have to be careful that you're not buying a second and there's still a first attached with the property. The company that I use that actually does the financing, they do a complete title search to make sure there are no liens against the property. They do an evaluation to come up with a fair price, and then they'll tell you how much they'll loan against it. It's generally 65 to 75% of the value is what they'll loan. And the way you can work that out is you can go to the auction you can have them go to the auction on your behalf. If they're doing the loan, they don't charge you for that.
That's convenient.
It's very convenient because you can waste hours and days going to these auctions.
I hate doing that.
Not to mention the emotional aspect of when you're at an auction, right? Because what that does is it takes away the emotion. You give somebody an instruction and you say, okay, this is how much I want to pay for this property. And then they execute that instruction instead of you getting a little too excited about it.
Yeah, well, great advice, very astute, very informed advice from Paul Dinkel of RE/MAX. He's going to share more with us. He already gave you ideas of how you can actually purchase homes for below market value without you actually even having to be there. Now we're going to also share with you some more tricks from Paul, as well as how do I get these homes? How do I purchase these homes? There's a lot of avenues to be able to purchase investment properties without breaking the bank. We'll find out more on the Don and Gino Real Estate and Finance Show on your hometown station, AM 1220 KHTS.